How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to my channel, or if it's your first time here, welcome. My name is PJ. Today we're going to talk about something and react to a podcast episode in particular of the All In podcast, something that I don't usually do. This is going to be my first one. I don't usually do reaction videos to podcasts, especially. Mainly what my channel has been about, mainly in the past few videos, has been about book reviews. I like to do that. I like to talk about things related to personal development, of things related to spirituality. And politics is something that I personally have interest in. I like to follow politics. I listen to a lot of different podcasts about politics and kind of what's going on in the United States, particularly in politics. So I like to follow that personally. And because this channel, in a sense, is an extension of me and my personal interests, and those personal interests are most often personal development or spirituality or just personal finance sometimes, vision, purpose, books, all kinds of things like that. And part of those personal interests, like I said, is politics. And so I felt like because this channel is a natural extension of me, I wanted to talk about politics. And in particular, I want to start with the reaction video to this podcast, which is about politics, but in particular, finance, tariffs, basically external revenue services, internal revenue services, taxes, and DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. So it covers that kind of financial side of the government, the commerce side of the government. This interview is with the Department of Commerce, the head of that department, basically, Howard Lutnick. And so we're going to talk about this podcast. And the reason I want to choose this podcast is because out of all the different podcasts I've listened to or interviews I've listened to, I felt like this 1.5 hour long podcast interview covered so much and explained it so thoroughly, and it was so well put in so many different areas, whether it was about tariffs, whether it was about taxes, whether it was about the external revenue services, ERS, DOGE, all those kind of things. They were so well put and well explained that it was better than half the podcast, if not all the podcasts I've listened to thus far about these topics, and get an understanding. And because tariffs is such a big deal in the economy and in the world right now, and in the United States in particular, and the tariffs policies that are being put in place, I feel like it's a good time to kind of get some awareness about what's going on. And I feel like this podcast is the best way to do that. So I wanted to kind of shine a light and help, amidst all this confusion that's going on, especially about tariffs. I want to bring some resource that maybe could help clarify things for you, that has helped clarify things for me. So I want to share that with you. So that's one. And then second of all, this video is not going to be void of any personal development or personal advancement or growth. It's not going to be void of any of those things. It's going to have a lot of those things. And the way I'm going to bring that about, and especially about personal finance, the way I'm going to bring that about is that we're going to react to, and we're going to watch 5 clips. When we watch these 5 clips, to some of them, I'm going to bring some sort of personal development / personal finance outlook. Because when I was watching this video and this podcast, I had so many parallels and relatable insights that I gained about kind of managing personal finance, even though this is about the United States finance. And I saw so many parallels between that, kind of the macro economy of that, and the micro economy of our personal lives, that I wanted to also shine that light and bring that kind of added layer of perspective to this reaction video, to this podcast that we're going to talk about, this All In podcast with Howard Lutnick. So without further ado, let's talk about who Howard Lutnick is and his role in the government right now, and his cabinet position. Howard Lutnick used to manage a big financial institution with, I think part of it is private investments and venture capital and those kind of things. So very big into investments, one of the biggest firms apparently in New York relating to investments and private equity and those kind of things. So it's one of the big key players in the financial industry in New York City. And it's been around since before 9/11. And the reason I bring that up is because he actually very sadly and unfortunately lost, I think, 200, a high number. I think literally like maybe 80 or 90% of his employees during 9/11, their office were in the World Trade Center, and basically their entire company got destroyed during that. So, and he was taking his son, or he was dropping off his son at the kindergarten. That's why he was not in the building at the time. But just extremely tragic. It took him a long time to kind of recover from that, obviously, as anyone would. And so he managed Cantor Fitzgerald since then and before that. And the way he knew President Trump is that back in the, I think, when he was 30, so he's 60 now, so 30 years ago, when he was when they were both younger, they used to be, you know, big in the kind of the charity groups and circles in New York, which is like a big kind of thing apparently, like in terms of like having events all the time for charity. So they knew that each other through that and used to hang out and be good friends. So when Donald Trump was looking for a Secretary of Commerce role, he tends to want to work with people who he knows well and trusts. And his first administration, it was a lot of family members. But in the second one, it's also like extended friends and acquaintances and people who he has worked with in the past. So Howard Lutnick is one of the people who he has worked with in the past and who he trusts. So he's in the cabinet and he's the Secretary of Commerce. So that's a little bit about Howard Lutnick. I think that covers it just to start. But basically, what's important to note from that is that he knows the president well, so they work together really well. So that's one. And then two is that he's very big into understanding investment, financial institutions, banking, all sort of related things to commerce. So he's very well equipped based on his past history on being able to, you know, understand financial matters in a global economy. So and domestically. So that's his background. And now we're going to start with the 5 clips. Okay, so this first part of the video, this first clip we're going to react to is going to be about DOGE, which is Department of Government Efficiency, who Elon Musk is the person who manages that and watches over that basically. And we're going to talk about how Howard Lutnick met Elon Musk, that first meeting, which happened on that day that Elon basically at SpaceX, they caught the rocket back with those 2 like chopstick metal arm things. And we're going to talk about kind of that infamous meeting, that the first meeting that they had, the meeting where Howard Lutnick pitched the idea to Elon Musk for the Department of Government Efficiency. We're going to talk about Elon's role and some of the things also Elon has done at, like, in particular Twitter and previous companies, where he's really good at bringing efficiency to inefficient systems, let's say. And so Howard Lutnick felt like he's a perfect person to have on this project of making the government more efficient, because Elon has a great track record of bringing efficiency to other inefficient organizations and making them much more efficient. So we're going to talk about that meeting, and this clip that I'm going to share about and show you guys is going to cover that beginning story of DOGE, how it came about, the idea, and the meeting. So without any further wait, let's jump into it.
And I said, I want to balance the budget of the United States of America. And this is the way we're going to do it. No one's ever checked the just under $4 trillion of entitlements. Every politician thinks what you have to do is you have to take the retirement age from 65 and make it a 70. Right. And you have to do this and this and this and this, because they never think about the money. Totally. But people like us would say, what's the first thing you do? Well, what's the value I'm getting for my money?
Totally.
Right? And what you find is if nobody ever, like as in ever, like I could say the word ever 12 times, has looked at where the money goes.
Totally.
And so there's not even a process to get it back when you send it to the wrong person.
Totally.
You just send another one out.
Yeah.
Like, think about it. I sent it accidentally. Notice how it's accidental.
Right.
It's always accidentally sent to the wrong person. Really, you wouldn't ever say the 5.9 million people who work for the government, there could be some crooks in there.
Right.
No. It's all accidental. What a load of nonsense this is.
There's some percentage of this.
But you would say.
Yeah.
And you would say.
No, just zero base it and let's figure out where
it's got to be 25%.
Yeah.
We'd all say if it's never been checked, how could it not be 25%?
Right.
Completely. How could it not be?
Right.
And the answer is that's $1 trillion a year.
Right.
Okay. So I said, I think we're going to cut $1 trillion a year in expense. And then I think we can, through tariffs and other means, we're going to get revenues of $1 trillion. Okay?
Incremental revenue.
Incremental revenue.
Yeah.
And we're going to balance the budget. And I said, but I have one favor to ask of you. If we can balance the budget for you, will you agree to waive all income tax for every person who makes less than $150,000?
So here where he says, I have a favor to ask you, he's talking about asking the president. Basically, they're in a car ride together and they're just talking, and he's kind of talking about the idea of DOGE, and he's asking the president, I have a favor to ask you, just FYI.
All income tax for every person who makes less than $150,000 a year for the United States of America, which, by the way, is about 85% of America.
Right.
Right.
And the reason you want to work for Donald Trump is he looks at me and goes, sure. Like, you realize the president of the United States said, if you balance the budget, sure. And he's not lying. He's not kidding. He's like, yeah, that seems like a great idea.
Right.
Right? And then I tell him, okay, I'm going to go recruit Elon. Because Elon's all in,
Yeah.
right? He's already said he's all in.
Yes.
He's already said he's going to Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Right? So I call Elon, and I don't know Elon. I don't know, but he's perfect for this. He's like, I'm in. Right? He says, I think we should cut 80% of the federal government because the essential employees, if the government shut down, essential employees are 450,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's 5.9 million people who work for the government.
Yeah.
How can 450,000 be essential and there's 5.9 million? So he says, like Twitter, I think we should cut 80%.
Yeah.
And I say, I know how to cut 50. And he says, I want to cut 80. I said, I know how to do 50. He goes, are you with me or against me? I go, I know how to legally do it. What do you have? And my son says it was like two alpha dogs just like fighting with each other for the first half hour. So then X comes in, right? And then he's got to walk his son X out. So he walks his son X out. And I'm thinking maybe the meeting's over, right? Because we've been together a half hour, 40 minutes, and maybe it's over. Because he got up and he walked out, he comes back and he sits down. He goes, Howard, this meeting is, right? That's what he says. He goes, this meeting is, and we sit down. So I said, I'm calling it DOGE. And I registered the name DOGE.
You said that.
Of course.
And were you familiar with Dogecoin and
Of
Elon's
course.
history?
It's Elon. I'm going to Elon.
Okay,
so what happens is, in the Defense Production Act
Yes.
in World War II,
Yes.
in order to get all the great executives
Yes.
of America to help with production, they named everything after jazz singers or everything that of the people who were on the committee that it would make them laugh and smile.
Okay.
Right? So I picked a Doge so he would laugh and smile. And he said, get the F out of here. Like when I said, we're going to name it DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, which I didn't think of. It was on the internet sort of floating around in June.
Yes.
Right? But I literally registered it, right? As the Department of Government Efficiency, like make it a real thing as a gratis vendor. And I said, this is how I've done it for me.
Yes.
So that I can run Cantor Fitzgerald, you can run SpaceX, right? You don't have to sign the conflict form and all this stuff because you're not working for the government. You're just giving stuff to the government.
Yes.
You are literally giving of yourself,
Right.
but you're not looking for anything. You're not taking any money. You're not owning anything. You're not doing anything. You're not on that side of the wall. You're on this side.
Yeah.
You're outside,
Yeah.
right? And so we had fun. We talked for 2 hours. And then on my Twitter feed, I took a picture of me and Elon outside, and I put up, welcome to DOGE. We are going to rip the waste out of our $6.5 trillion government and balance the budget. We must elect Donald J. Trump president.
Yeah.
Right? And I posted that with I probably at the time had 25,000 viewers, and I got 45 million views.
Wow.
Right? So it was me and Elon.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of DOGE.
So there you have it. That's how Doge came about and how it started. So Doge actually is like a big meme on the internet, has been around for like ever. And Doge is this dog, right? And it was like a meme thing. And Elon is for some reason obsessed with this Doge thing. And he had a kind of like a meme coin of Doge and like so many different references to Doge, and he just loves that. And so when Howard Lutnick, super smartly pitched this, he named it Doge to get even more buy-in from Elon. And so Elon was in. And the reason this is important, and kind of its application or relevance to personal finance, like the moment I heard this and just understood kind of what Doge is about and is doing, I saw the relevancy of it to our personal finance when it comes to cutting waste. And the way I think about it is it's like cutting out subscriptions to things that you no longer use. So there's so many ways in our own lives that financially waste can add up, like things that we just get used to doing or used to paying for or forget that we're paying for, and other ways that waste is happening in our personal finances. And oftentimes we get kind of used to this waste and or forget about the waste. And so every now and then we kind of have to basically audit, right? Audit our own personal finances. Okay, I'm spending X amount on this subscription. I'm spending this amount on this subscription. Are these things still needed? Are these still useful spendings? Are these valuable for me still? Or do I need to cut some of this out? So the government has never basically had this, right? And in so many different parts of the government, they fail audits, they spend money they didn't know where it went, have zero accounting of where it went, how it got spent. And we have a huge debt. We have a $36 trillion debt, and we have a $2 trillion deficit. So the deficit is like, basically you're spending more than you're making, right? If you're making $1,000, you're spending $3,000. So you have a $2,000 deficit, right? You have $2,000. You have $2,000 less than your income compared to what you're spending. And that's what the government has, but on a massive scale, on a $1 trillion scale. So every year, our budget, like the amount of money the government, quote unquote, needs right now to function is 6.5 trillion. And our income from everything we do is 4.5 trillion. So we literally have a $2 trillion deficit every year. So every year we get $2 more trillion in debt, which is insane. So basically DOGE's job is to cut 1 trillion by finding, exposing waste, fraud, and abuse in different parts of the government, auditing different organizations. And as Elon has done across a lot of his companies, especially namely Twitter, famously when he bought Twitter, he fired 80% of the staff because he felt like the company does not need those many people to be productive. And basically 20% of the employees are doing all the most important works, they're like the essential employees. And if you guys remember during COVID, the whole essential employee debacle, right? That essential employees need to come to work, but the non-essential, don't come to work. And so there is this like built-in awareness of like who the essential employees are in the government. And I'm not saying this is right or wrong. This has just never been done. And it's like something's got to change. We know that for sure, right? Now, the approach can be debated. This is the approach they're taking, but something needs to change because we cannot go $2 trillion in debt every year. Just like in your personal finance, you can't go every month, get two more thousand, I mean, depending on your income, $2 more $1,000 in debt or $20,000 more in debt or $200,000 more in debt. You just can't afford that. Like that's an unsustainable setup, right? So you got to make some changes. So nothing changes if nothing changes. So you got to make some changes. And this is one of the changes they're making. Let's audit. Let's look at all the different organizations of the government, different departments, and cut the waste. So like I said, Elon famously fired 80% of the employees at Twitter. And during COVID, like the government already has this idea of like the essential employees. Like these are the essential employees. And so they use that and they utilize that. And basically their thinking is, okay, if we have 5 million government employees, but only, 200,000 are essential, quote unquote, based on our awareness and the setup of the system right now, then there is definitely roles that don't need to be there. There are jobs that don't need to be there. So that's their idea. Let's go eliminate all this excess, wasteful spending, whether it's unnecessary jobs, unnecessary bureaucracy, and things that just don't need to be there, right? So they're gonna kind of like take the axe and start cutting off all things that are not necessary. And they've already, through AI in particular, which is like kind of the tool Elon and his team at DOGE are using to find a lot of this waste, fraud, and abuse, they've identified so much, I don't know the exact number, but so much unnecessary, like basically like stupid spending that maybe you could afford to spend stupidly or way too excessively when you have a lot of excess money, like, famously like a Conor McGregor type or those famous people that flaunt like a lot of money and spend a lot of money and they're not like saving their money all the time. Maybe you could afford to do that when you're bringing in massive checks from your fights or your, athletic endeavors, whatever it is, or your movies. But once that you don't have that, like you don't have that surplus to be out here spending like that, you're going to get yourself in debt and trouble and basically in financial ruin, which what happens to a lot of those celebrity types who spend excessively, right? So maybe you could afford to spend stupidly like that when you have all that excess and surplus, but we don't right now. So something's got to happen. We got to reduce our spending. We got to be able to reduce, that budget that I said as 6.5 trillion. Like we currently, to maintain everything as is, we need 6.5 trillion a year. But our income is 4.5 trillion. We need to find a way to bring that money that we need from 6.5 closer to 5.5 and then closer to 4.5. But one thing they're doing, and we'll get clear and understand that through this video, is that that's one part. Elon's job is to cut 1 trillion. So bring that 6.5 to 5.5. And then Howard Lutnick is gonna, through ERS, External Revenue Services, so which has to do with tariffs, has to do with selling gold cards, has to do with identifying, huge tax loopholes that a lot of companies are taking advantage of. One of the ones he names is like taking and basing their corporation in Ireland, so they pay tax there, but they don't pay the tax here. And like these kind of loopholes, eliminating some of that. His goal is to make a trillion. To make a trillion, so bring our income to 5.5 from 4.5. And Elon's going to cut 1 trillion. So bring it from 6.5 to 5.5. Then boom, you have 5.5 trillion of income and you have 5.5 trillion of spending. The budget is going to be balanced. And that is their main target. That is their main goal, is to balance the budget of the United States. Which then, once you accomplish that, this is the cool part for us as people of this country, is that we get to be the beneficiary of that. Their goal is, and you'll get to that later, and he did just talk about that right now in that clip that we watched, their goal is to eliminate income tax for anyone making less than $150,000 a year, which would be phenomenal for us. I fall in that category. For people who do fall in that category, that's going to be phenomenal. That's going to be so much more money that you have. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like it's honestly, it just pisses you off when you look at like how much of your money goes to taxes. It's like, really? So for normal people like us, like that's gonna be so much more money to have. Like that's gonna be great. But honestly, another thing that does is that one of the reasons all these companies offshore their labor is because in the US you have to pay people more, but if and over there they don't. But if the income tax gets removed for the people that make less than 150,000, you can pay them less, but they're getting all of that. None of that is going to taxes, to income tax. So therefore, you could pay people less overall instead of giving them 50,000, so that maybe their take-home pay is 36 or 30, like depending on state, different. You can actually pay them 36K, know that they're gonna take all of that home, all this 36K. So therefore, you can actually bring the salary you have to give people lower. So, and then that's gonna have an onshoring effect of jobs, especially manufacturing jobs. So it's gonna be great. If it all plays out the way it's going to. Now, the second part that we're going to get to, or the second clip that we're going to react to, is basically Howard Lutnick's explanation of what the Trump Gold Card is. And it's basically, you can buy access, like you can come here, pay for it. A lot of countries have this set up where you pay an X amount. Like I'm Iranian. A lot of Iranians who are rich and wealthy are able to immigrate and have their family immigrate to Canada or other countries, England too, I think, and Dubai, I believe as well. But like they can immigrate there by buying in or investing a certain amount of money, whether it's you pay the government X amount or you buy a house there or you in some sort of basically buying into the country. They're able to kind of purchase the ability to go there and live there. So the US doesn't apparently have that right now, and they're going to just start selling that ability. And so that's called the Trump Gold Card. He's going to talk about that. But also the bigger kind of overarching idea here is the ERS. It's the External Revenue Services that Howard Lutnick is starting and managing, which is, let's find other revenue streams for the government, because we have this deficit, right? We're spending more than we have. So let's find other ways to make money, which the application of that, and we'll get to that more, to personal finances is like the importance of, and in businesses is the importance of creating other revenue streams. And that's what they're doing. And that's what the Trump Gold Card is. So let's go ahead and take a look here about what Howard Lutnick has to say about the Trump Gold Card.
Speaking of potentially great ideas, can you tell us about the Trump card?
Sure. So
whose idea was that? And how did that come about?
John Paulson had a call with Donald Trump and was talking to Donald Trump. and was kicking around the idea of we should sell, right? Why do we give away visas? We should sell them. And they're talking about it. Donald Trump calls me, gets me on the phone, right? We all talk about it, right? And then we go from there. And then my job is to figure out, like I always figure out, how to do it. What's the path?
Do you have
Let's
a
go
path?
figure it out. Of course. About 2 weeks from today, it goes out. Okay? Elon's building me the software right now,
Yeah.
right? And then out it goes. And by the way, yesterday I sold 1,000.
Oh, you did? I got a poly market I created on how many are you guys going to sell this year. So
Cool.
Yeah, curious to see how many.
That's fantastic. Do you want to tell people just the rough?
Yeah, what are
broad
the terms
strokes?
on
Okay.
it? Yeah.
So if you're a U.S. citizen, you pay global tax.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're not going to bring in outsiders going to come in to pay global tax. So if you have a green card, which used to be a green card,
Yeah.
now gold card, you're a permanent resident of America. You can be a citizen, but you don't have to be. And none of them are going to choose to be. What they're going to do is they're going to have the right to be in America. They pay $5 million, and they have the right to be in America. They have the right to be in America as long as they're
permanent
good
residency. Yeah.
as long as they're good people.
And they're vetted.
And they're vetted,
Yeah.
and they can't break the law. We can always take it away if they're like evil or mean or bad or something. Not mean, but if they do something horrible, you can take it away, right? But the idea is, if I was not American, and I lived in any other country, I would buy 6. One for me, one for my wife and my 4 kids, because God forbid something happens. I want to be able to go to America, and I want to have the right to go to the airport, to go to America, and them to say, hello, Mr. Lutnick. Hello, Mr. Lutnick and the Lutnick family. Welcome home.
Right.
That's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear I can't come here when there's a horrible war, a horrible whatever.
Right.
I want to be able to go home, right? And once I'm home, I might as well build a business.
Yeah.
So you have the most productive people in the world going to start spending time here. They're going to have a family office. They're going to hire some people.
And you're not going to tax their external worldwide income.
They only tax the money they make in America, which is what we do now.
Yeah.
But their global income stays out.
And they pay $5 million. And how many people do you think there are that could qualify in the world? How
There
many?
are 37 million people in the world who are capable of buying the card.
That's
In case you were wondering,
37 million. That's a lot more than ChatGPT told me.
who are capable of buying it.
Who are capable of buying it.
Now, I'm not saying they will, but they're capable of buying.
How many do you think you'll sell?
The president thinks we can sell 1 million.
So $5
That's
trillion.
$5 trillion.
I think $1 million is reasonable.
So that's the idea there. That's insane how much money can be generated from that. But I'm telling you, as someone who has lived in another country, especially a country that's very unstable and there's a lot of conflicts. I'm talking about Iran. I'm originally from Iran and lived there till I was almost 17. So I now have spent almost equal amounts in the United States as a citizen here that I have lived in Iran. So equal amounts in both countries. And I'm telling you, as someone who was there, not that we necessarily had the ability to spend $5 million for my every member of my family. However, so many people could and would do that, right? Like it wouldn't even be a question or a second thought. Like if they have the ability and basically have the funds to have this ability to purchase the ability to come here, because everyone kind of, in a sense, right? Like immigrants in other countries, they kind of settle for where they can get to, whatever country allows them to immigrate to. But the dream opportunity, the dream land of opportunity is still, and the dream for everyone, most immigrants, at least where I grew up, is to come to America. So for people to have the ability to spend $5 million and come here, and most people who do in other countries, especially those who experience a lot of turmoil, would. Like it's like in a heartbeat. Like it's not even a second consideration. People would do anything to be here, really. I mean, it's the most desired place to immigrate to if you're in another country, especially one that's conflict torn. And people would definitely buy it. So I can see them selling a lot of these. And like you said, $5 trillion could be generated just through that. So their goals which this is a branch or an aspect of the ERS, External Revenue Services. One of the ways, external revenue services, let's make money in other ways, right? That's kind of what the idea is. One of those ways is going to be the Trump Gold Card. Another way is going to be tariffs, which we'll get to. But this is, I think, a phenomenal idea. A lot of other countries do it, and obviously everyone's going to be vetted, and it's not a irrevocable thing if you decide to do some horrendous thing when you're here. But I think it's a great idea. I think it can generate a lot of money. And like he said, he's already sold 1,000, which is insane. And 5 trillion can be generated through this. And their kind of big vision with this is like, by generating these money and these funds, help pay off that debt, help, reduce it and eliminate income tax for people. The whole idea, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on these different kind of campaign trail slogans that were thrown around. They're going to become real, practical, and doable policies based on these external revenue services. Because it's like, you got to make the money somehow. You can't just not get that money, especially when we're in this much debt. Like, you got to make the money, but let's just change ERS instead of internal revenue services, making that money from our own people. Let's basically tax and get that money from other countries and other people from other countries who are willing to pay US for what they're going to get in exchange, whether it's access to come here and live, whether it's the ability to do business here, whether it's the ability to sell to this country, aka via tariffs that we get to. We are the biggest consumer in the world. The US buys most people's exports more than anybody else. So we are still in a very valuable position, at least for now, as long as we, play our cards right as much as possible. But people are willing to spend that money. So I think with the ERS, this external revenue services, to me, the most exciting part of that whole thing is just elimination of income tax. Like, they do that one thing, like, all of this is good. So now moving on to the next part of the video, we're going to talk about GDP, gross domestic product. And he's going to talk about kind of what GDP is, or how it's been kind of played with it a little bit and has been a tool to like trick people. But I'll bring kind of like a little bit of personal finance perspective on that. So without further ado, guys, let's jump into this third clip about GDP.
I get to talk about GDP and how I'm gonna clean up the nonsense that's in GDP. I can explain that if you make a tank and someone buys a tank, that is GDP.
Yeah.
But 1,000 people thinking about buying a tank, right, who take your tax money and I give it to them and they go, I wonder, should we buy a tank or not? That's not GDP.
Right. You're saying government spending should not be counted in GDP.
No, government spending to buy a tank should be.
Right.
Government spending
that's non-productive.
Non-productive.
This is
should not be.
This is so important. I don't think a lot of people realize this. How much of GDP is non-productive government spending?
How about we do one thing?
Yeah.
GDP. D means domestic. P is domestic production. It's not consumption.
Right.
If I go out and buy a Toyota, right, that's not GDP. Right? If I buy a Chevy that's made in America, that's a D. Right? So people think it's like a consumption model.
Metric,
Right? That's not it. And you can check another one is there's gross domestic income.
Right.
That's also good. So by the way, they grow about the same rate. It's kind of fun.
Right.
So the key for me is to take out the part that if I cut non-productive, 1 million government employees who are non-productive, meaning they don't make tanks. Right? If I take that out, it's going to look like our GDP declined. But you'd say, but what really happened? No, our expenses went down.
This is so important, by the way, because people talk about a recession, and a lot of people create a lot of red lights and alarm bells about we're going to go into a recession if we cut all this spending. But the follow-on effect of cutting non-productive spending is that the workforce and those dollars flow into more productive parts of the economy where we make more things, we create more jobs, we create higher wages. And that's the theory that you guys are trying to execute against. I don't think a lot of people in the general public fully understand that is so important to kind of explain and get across here.
Okay, if we put 3 people behind us and they sat behind us and they did nothing, and each of us gave them $125,000, just like this, here you go. And they just sat there, right? What is that? That's not GDP. That's actually me taking my money and giving it to them. We've produced nothing. We've no purpose of the earth. It was my money. The income, however I earned my income, was mine, and I just gave it to them. They didn't really earn income. It's really a transfer pricing model. That is currently considered in GDP, and it's nonsense. So if I stopped paying them, right, what would I do? The first thing you'd say is, well, then why am I paying so much tax? Bang.
Right.
Okay, so now we're in the concept of where we are.
Okay, so the most important part, or like my takeaway from that, is like a lot of that stuff is cool and all, but like what I'm going to share now is like what was like the most exciting kind of thought process behind that for me. So what he's really talking about, my understanding of it, is like GDP, this gross domestic product, which is like the total amount of things, right? Like a monetary amount of things that a country produces. So I think for the US is like the highest in the world, I believe. And it's like, I want to say $29 trillion per year, like of things that we produce, the value of everything, right? But the tricky thing about GDP is that like a lot of things are kind of added or taken into GDP as something we're producing, but like it's not really something we're producing. So it's kind of like it's like a hoax almost. Like it's saying like it's like a company saying we're making $29 million a year, right? But then you look at the numbers and it's like it's completely off. Like it's not that, like that's not what they produce. They produce actually like $13 million or whatever. So there are these like tricky loopholes in the way they count GDP that are like more like spending, and it's unproductive spending. It's like government spending is counted in GDP, but if he's saying like if it's spending on a non-productive thing, how are you taking that into GDP? That's not a gross domestic production. So he's trying to, and they're going to apparently come out with the numbers of like the actual GDP. And why is that important? Like he talks about like most politicians or candidates for presidency, if they're in office, if let's say the Democrats are in office or the Republicans are in office, before like that year before the election, they bump up spending of the government to create this like fake growth in GDP, right? Like, oh, like, look, we're doing such a great job. GDP is going through the roof, but it's fake spending. It's like on non-productive things. And he says like historically, if you track the year before election, GDP goes through the roof because they want to create this like false illusion of like, things are great. Everything's going great. You should elect us again. And he's saying that we're going to take that out, which in one way you look at it, you're like, they're like shooting themselves in the foot if they do that, right? Like if everyone's playing that game, they're going to make themselves look bad. And he talked about that, like if you take out this non-productive aspect of GDP, then it's going to look like we're actually declining. Like it's going to look bad. But what he's saying is that they're thinking about it from a higher perspective of like the value of identifying genuinely what we're producing, like how much we're producing, and cutting out that unnecessary waste and all that stuff that's getting counted as production. We're going to get a clear idea of what we're actually producing. It's kind of like if you hire someone and you give him a job to go sell your product, go sell my product X, go sell that. And they come back and they do nothing, but they lie to you and they say, I sold 200. Okay. So then you make, you're like, oh, I'm doing so good. Like, let me buy more supplies to produce 200 more. This person's crushing it. And I'm going to get the raw material. I'm going to make these investments in these flyers and these other marketing things. And you're going to make all that stuff, right? But you come to find out this person actually sold 3 products, right? And then you're like, oh my God, A, I don't have that income that I thought I have. B, like I didn't need all this raw material. So like you're making all this false moves because you were running on false premise. Your assumption was like, I sold 200. I have the money that I would generate from 200, but you don't. So this is why this is important. By understanding what's waste, you can actually take the actions that will produce more, better outcomes. Like, hey, like let's actually do X, Y, and Z project to actually produce more. Like we're not doing as good as we think. If we eliminate this waste, we actually get a clear idea of where we are, And then we can actually pull the levers that will help us produce more and actually will help the country become better, right? Because we're actually doing the right action, the right tasks that are leading to our production, not giving ourselves a false sense of accomplishment. It's like you're getting a fake grade. Someone's giving you an A when you actually got a C. So you don't even realize you need to study more to actually get an A. And then you get to take a real test and you realize you're way less knowledgeable than you thought on the subject matter because the other teacher lied to you and they said great job when you weren't doing a great job. So you didn't get actual real accountability and actual real understanding of where you are. And due to that false premise, you're operating thinking you're way more capable and doing better than you are when you're not. And so when the real test comes, you fail. So ideally, like if you're a fighter and you're training for a fight, you want the sparring partner not to like kill you in training, but you want them to actually try to create a good replication of what a real fight against your opponent in the cage will be, so that when the time comes, you're ready. You've actually practiced kind of with a practice partner that didn't hold back, that actually gave you the experience. So when the actual time comes, you're actually prepared, you're actually competent. And that comes from having accurate data back, like an accurate fighter against you that fights like the fight, like the right grade in class. So those kind of things are what they're trying to do and replicate here in the government. But another reason and another thing that's kind of important here for me personally, as it relates to personal finance, is that one of my favorite and impactful personal finance books I've ever read, this has helped me since 2017 when I read this. It has helped me set up like automatic payments and processes and systems in my personal finance kind of management that have been in place since I read it, and I still literally use them till this day, and I've never had a need to change them necessarily. Like, it's phenomenal setup, phenomenal operating system for personal finances. This book is called I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. I think he wrote it in 2009 and then reproduced it again in 2019 for the 10-year anniversary edition. And phenomenal book. And his whole premise, which I think the reason this book works and helps people and has helped so many people, is because he's realistic, right? Because a lot of personal finance advice would come and say, don't buy lattes, never spend on things that don't matter, whatever, stupid things, whatever. But what he says is like, what stupid spending to someone else, to some finance guru, like, outdated kind of personal finance advice, maybe something that brings you a lot of joy. Like, big personal finance advice back in the days was like, don't spend money on like Starbucks latte and all this $5 coffee that's unnecessary. Make your coffee at home. Which in one sense, yeah, you save a lot of money. But the premise that Ramit Sethi works on is like, no, if that cup of coffee is like what brings you joy, let's not cut spending from that area of your life. Let's actually cut spending in all the other areas that you don't care about, that are not like what you love, and pour that into that area. Pour all that money that you free up into that area that you love. So like, if you, let's say, have a huge, like, love to buy records and you're a big audiophile and like those things cost a lot of money and you love to spend money on that, someone, just a typical like personal finance person, might look at that and be like, that's wasteful, don't buy that. But if that's what you love, how about you cut spending in all these other areas that you don't love, and then pour that into that thing that you love? So I love that approach. It's like, cut basically savagely, cut viciously on areas you don't care about and that you don't love, and spend lavishly and even excessively on areas that you do love, because now you have freed up the money. So I love that approach. And I think this is what the government is trying to do. That's why like this kind of bringing this perspective to it is interesting. The government is trying to cut all these parts, these monies that we don't care about, that are unnecessary, that are wasteful, so that then we can spend lavishly on things that we do care about. Reducing our debt, better social security and social benefits for people, and not having to cut those because we have to cut money. Like, no, we want to support people in that way. Let's put money into that and not and cut money from other areas that we don't care about. So that's, I feel like, what they're trying to do. And reduce our deficit, pay off our debt, put money to Social Security, eliminate income tax for people. Like those are things we care about. Let's spend lavishly on those by cutting things we don't care about. So that's what I think the government's trying to do with this whole clarifying GDP, actually identifying production so that we can clearly see what's waste and then clearly see what's productive and spend more on those genuinely producing levers in the economy and cut those things that we don't care about and that are not producing. And that's why it's important to non-convolute GDP and actually have it be an accurate representation of genuine gross domestic production and not just gross domestic money transfer or personal money transfer or government money transfer that's not producing any actual outcome. So that's what they're doing. Now, time to jump into clip 4. Okay, so this is the most important part of the video. This is going to be the longest clip in the video as well from the podcast, from the All In podcast. It's going to be a 7-minute long clip, but it's about the history of tariffs and the Trump administration's kind of tariff plan, which has caused a lot of confusion in the world right now. A lot of people are confused. People don't really know what's going on, why, the tariffs have been kind of messing with the economy a lot lately. We had some like really bad days in the stock market just this last week as the time of this recording, which is April 28th. And last week or the week before that, it was really bad, like for the stock market in general. So there's a lot of confusion. And out of all this confusion and noise, I honestly haven't seen an explanation as deeply informative as this and as well put as this tariff history and then the tariff plan execution, basically strategy. So we're going to watch this 4th clip. Here we go.
Howard, explain to us global trade as you understand it, and then the context of tariffs and maybe historically and what role they played now.
So I remind people that on the earth, there was the Dark Ages. So the Dark Ages meant that the world knew how to read. And then because of religious and other actions, they burned all the books.
Yeah.
Right.
And literally, the earth stopped learning how to read for 500 years or 400 years. We didn't know how to read. And we knew how to read before. So how could you forget? So America was built on tariffs with no income tax. No income tax till 1913. None. Greatest, richest country in the world. So when Donald Trump says, make America great again, what he's talking about is from 1880 to 1913, when the country had so much money that we had blue ribbon commissions, which you guys would have been on, right? To try to figure out how to spend the money. Right? And no income tax. Then we put in the income tax in 1913. Why? Because we're entering World War I.
Yeah.
And don't we all need to contribute to protect democracy and to protect our way of life? Mm-hmm. Right? Then what happens is the world goes into chaos. We come out of chaos. Right? And then we're starting to think of, well, what do we do? What do we do? And then 1929, the stock market crashes. Right? 1933, we start to say, oh God, we forgot. We need to do tariffs. 1933. How can you do tariffs when the markets crash, the world's going into depression, and you're going to do tariffs in 1933? You can't charge the rest of the world money unless the rest of the world's okay.
That's right.
So it was too little, too late. Right? So then we come out of World War II. It's 1945. We need to rebuild the world. Okay? So we decide we're going to take our tariffs down. And we'll let them, here's the key, we'll let them have tariffs be up. And we will export the power of our economy to let them rebuild. And we'll let them rebuild. And that's what happens. So 1945, we have the Marshall Plan, right? And we do it in Japan, of course, because they need to be rebuilt. What's the difference, right? So they need to be rebuilt. And then what happens? We have the 50s, and we have the Korean War. So we let them rebuild, which means low tariffs here, high tariffs there. Low tariffs here, high tariffs there. Then we have the Vietnam War, right? So now all of a sudden we have all of Southeast Asia. Low tariffs here, high tariffs there. And then you say to yourself, okay, I get the 40s. I get the 50s. I get the 70s, right? But 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010, what? It's time out. Worst statistic I'm going to tell you today. Average life expectancy of high school educated workforce. So, by the way, the United States of America, 2/3 is high school educated, 1/3 is college educated. The difference today of average life
By the way, I
expectancy.
cut there. There is more between these two things, but I cut it just to shorten the clip for the sake of this reaction video, just FYI. But he's talking about the average life expectancy of high school graduate citizens of the United States versus the college graduate. And it is drastic and very disheartening to hear.
Of average life expectancy between those two categories is 7 years. 7-year average life expectancy. It's not the air. It's not the food. It's not the medicine. It's despair. My grandfather worked in the auto factory. My father worked in the auto factory. I have a good life. I'm going to do Friday night lights and football. I mean, it's going to be a good life. I have a good middle-class life. I'm a member of the United Auto Workers. Life is going to be good. The factory moves to Mexico, and I am just screwed because the government of the United States of America didn't care about industrial policy and didn't protect me at all, and let cheap labor in Mexico. I'm sure the Mexican people went from $4 an hour to $5 an hour, and they're kicking it. But I destroyed you, and that is incredible failure of industrial policy, which nobody wants to talk about, but you talk about it as average life expectancy, and you're talking about it about reshoring and building the life for the people who are America. The idea is to choose things that are going to reshore.
Yeah, exactly.
Come here.
This is so important.
Hire my people.
Yeah.
Bring it home.
Yeah.
Right? When we say we're going to charge a tariff, and other countries who lean on us, who rely on us, who bleed on us, who can't live without the oxygen that is our economy. Because remember, the thing about our economy is, while we have a $29 trillion GDP, we are the consumer of 20 trillion.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is the key thing. We buy everybody's stuff. So who's more important? Let's say they have an economy that produces stuff, and we have an economy that buys stuff.
Yeah.
The customer is always right. We all know the customer is always right, because if no one buys it, they can't produce it.
Right.
So everybody needs our economy. When? Now. I mean, to the fact that China consumes less than 10 trillion and primarily tries to figure out how to sell it to itself.
Yeah.
Right? So they don't buy anybody else's stuff.
Right.
So we are the world's consumer.
Yes.
We're the world's customer.
Right.
Right? So that's point number one. So we want them to come here. And if they can't come here, what if you pay us? Okay, now let's say there was a 20% tariff. And in order to sell his goods, he knows he can raise the price 10%, but he can't really raise it 20. So he eats 10 and the price goes up 10. Let's just say. That 20 goes into the coffers of the United States of America. From the President of the United States, who said we're going to balance the budget, and then his goal is to drive down income tax in the United States of America, including waiving tax. So what has he said so far? With that in his pocket, knowing that this is what we're going to try to do, what does he announce? No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. Why is he saying those things? Right? Because he knows that he's got Elon's going to cut and Howard's going to raise, and he's going to have the tools to deliver on his promise.
And that'll unlock
literally
spending.
the money.
More money for folks to spend.
And they'll have more money to spend, right? So the External Revenue Service,
Yeah.
if we went back to Make America Great Again,
Yeah.
which is pre-1913,
Yeah.
which is let them pay, you don't pay. And what that means is let them pay, try to balance the budget, try to waive tax on everybody who makes less than $150,000,
Yeah.
right? And look what you did for America.
Yeah.
Holy moly, look what you,
Okay,
and
so
by the way,
yeah.
labor costs come
Yeah,
smashing down because it's tax-free.
Yeah.
So if their earnings are tax-free, right, then they're happy to work because they get the money.
Right.
Right.
So what happens is cost of labor comes down because we're run correctly as a government.
so speaking
and this is
of-
what I'm trying to do.
So he obviously didn't cover anything about tariffs that I am gonna now add to. I think one thing that is important though that I believe I cut here because it was a long explanation and I want to shorten the clip as much as I could. But basically, he talked about NAFTA, which basically eliminated tariffs between Canada, United States, and Mexico. And at the time that Bill Clinton passed that in 1994, I believe, I don't think they foresaw what's going to happen as a result of it when it comes to manufacturing. But basically, when manufacturers, if they built something in Mexico, like a Ford, if they built something in Mexico and they had to ship it upwards to the United States, they had to pay tariff. So it didn't make sense for them economically, even though the cost of labor was lower there, right? But once they eliminated the tariff on Mexico to the US, then all these car manufacturers in particular, Detroit used to be a huge manufacturing hub basically for cars. It's all gone now. But the thing that caused that to be gone is the manufacturers, they all thought, okay, well, if I have zero tariff from Mexico to here, then and the cost of labor there is like, just for simple math, like if it's $7.25 minimum wage here, and it's like $3, $4 there, $3 there, whatever, maybe even less, then I'll just take all those jobs there, or all that manufacturing there, and then import the cars from Mexico to the United States for zero tariffs. The cost would go up, not at all. So it's just complete win for them, but it's a complete loss for the manufacturing workers, the auto workers in Detroit and other states that had the manufacturing jobs there. And the despair that he was talking about, the average life expectancy of the high school grads versus the college grads, that differentiation, that discrepancy, that difference is because of this despair of them not having the opportunities, job opportunities they once had that still allowed them to have a great life. Don't need a college grad degree. And with a high school degree, they could still have a great life, had access to these great jobs that still provided them with a middle class life. But that despair sets in when all that hope and all that opportunity is gone and it's offshore. So they're going to tariff things primarily that are going to help reshore jobs. They're not going to tariff something that is impossible to make. Like he uses the example in a video in a different part of the clips of mangoes. Like you just cannot grow mango in the United States. So they're not going to tariff mangoes that is impossible to grow here. So there's no reshoring opportunity there. So they're not going to tariff something that cannot be reshored and brought here. They're only going to tariff things that are going to be reshored. So that's one thing I wanted to add. The second thing I want to add is how accustomed we get, how used to we get to the wrong form of doing things. And the particular, like what I'm saying here in this example is like, the fact that like we had, which I didn't know, honestly, the fact that we didn't have income tax till 1913, I think is the time that they introduced it. The fact that we didn't have it back then and all the money that the country needed was generated through tariffs, and all of a sudden like now we've had income tax forever and we're all just like accustomed to that. Like that's just the way it is. Like in so many areas of life, we just get used to dysfunction. Like something is dysfunctional and we just get accustomed to that to a point that we don't even realize it's dysfunctional. Like dysfunction has become our new normal. We just live in dysfunction and we don't even realize it's dysfunctional. And this income tax situation is it dysfunction? Like this is not how it used to operate when America was a better America, when America was great, quote unquote. Like no income tax. And we just got used to this dysfunction of like, yeah, we're just gonna like work our asses off, and then like so much of our income is gonna go to this income tax that is not even used for like invaluable ways, as Elon and DOGE team are discovering. Like so much of this income tax has gone to like stupid things. If income tax was genuinely making our communities better and we saw that tangibly, then I think most people would be on board. It's just like they're using it. It's like you're giving someone money and they're using it for stupid purposes and stupid causes that don't even benefit you or your community or your family or anyone in the country. And then it's like, you don't want to give them that money. They are not a good steward. It's like that story in the Bible with Jesus, the guy who had like 3 servants and gives each of them, like this guy $10, that guy $5, 5 coins, this other guy 2 coins, and sees like what they do with it. And one of them just hides it. One of them does well with it. One of them loses it. Like, it's like give it to the guy. Like we would give the money to the guy that can multiply, that can bring good results. But if they're wasting it, if they're using it in stupid ways, like we don't want to give that. So that the fact that we just get so used to like bad form or bad way of doing things to dysfunctional situations is insane. Like people can be in dysfunctional relationship, dysfunctional partnerships, dysfunctional family, and just get accustomed to that. Or maybe like they go in a sort of like denial that they choose because it's too painful or impossible to change the situation. So you just choose to accept it as it is because you have no other opportunity out of it. But the way just we got in this country, like accustomed to the dysfunction of income tax and how dysfunctional income tax is, like it's just crazy. And the fact that we used to generate all of it from tariffs. And the example that comes to mind is like, I used to be a personal trainer, and in particular, the exercise of squats or deadlifts or like these compound movements, these compound lifts that are like multi-stepped. If so many people, like let's say through high school football training or like athletic training in high school where like things are done poor form, fast, all that stuff, they get like stuck in a bad form of squats, let's say in this example. And like they just get so used to doing it with a bad form, like that dysfunctional form becomes their new normal. Like that's their default. And they forget that that's dysfunctional. And it's so hard to try to retrain them from a dysfunctional form to a correct functional form. And it takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of pain, and a lot of unlearning and a lot of undoing. And that's what the United States is going through. It's like no one, like every administration kicked the can down the road on this tariff situation. No one wanted to deal with it. It's hard. It's painful to change, and it's dysfunctional. And we're just like, all right, we're just gonna like keep going with this dysfunction because it's too painful. It's too bad for my administration to like deal with this, deal with the backlash of this. But somebody finally had to be like, yo, this is messed up. This tariff situation is messed up. It's unfair, and we're gonna make it fair. But people who have been benefiting from it being unfair, other countries, like they're gonna be pissed. Right? Like they've had a great time. It's kind of like when on the Enneagram, I talked about the Enneagram on my channel too, and it's like a personality typing system. There's a type called type 9, which is my personality type. And one of the things about them is like they don't have good boundaries. Like they haven't put boundaries in place like, hey, with this person, like you don't get to treat me like this. No, with that person, like you don't get to talk to me like that. Like they don't set up boundaries. Like they just allow people to like walk all over them in a sense, right? And to try to create boundaries with people that are used to you not having those boundaries, it's a very painful, tumultuous, conflict-ridden process because they've been accustomed to taking advantage of you. So now all of a sudden when you're like putting your foot down, you're like, no more, you're no longer, are you going to take advantage of me? They're going to throw a hissy fit. They're going to be pissed, but it's necessary. Those conflicts are necessary. That hard time is necessary. Going through those challenging times is necessary to create a more functional situation. And this is what the United States is going through. That's why you see all of this chaos and dysfunctionality come to the surface in the general economy. But that's because we are going through this challenging, painful time of re-correcting bad form. We are fixing our country's squad form. Okay, it's going to be painful. It's going to take time, but it's necessary and it has to be done. And so you have to go through that conflict, through that painful time to get to a much better outcome. And that's what the United States is going through right now. At least that is my opinion. And that's what I believe and am taking away from this Howard Lutnick conversation on the All In podcast. So lastly, we're just going to get to the outro and kind of the overall imagination that Howard Lutnick has for the United States, that the Trump administration has for the United States, and the better United States that this country could be if this imagination plays out and this dream comes true based on these different tactics of ERS, the DOGE, the tariffs, the Trump gold card, etc. So we're going to get into that outro reflection part now.
Here's the way I say it. I said we have a $6.5 trillion budget. We have $4.5 trillion of revenues. We have $36 trillion in debt. And we have a budget deficit of $2 trillion. We're going to balance the budget. Trump card, tariffs, getting rid of scams to get fair tax. That's my trillion. Elon's got to do his trillion. So whenever I see him getting off the rails, he and I go out and we have a strong conversation together that you've got to do your trillion. So you got to focus not on small potatoes.
Right.
Big, 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 big. I need you to do your side of the trillion. Now, as it turns out, I'm going to do more than $1 trillion because I'm me. Elon's probably going to do more than $1 trillion because he's him. And then what we're going to do is our objective is to smash down the Internal Revenue Service and change America. And then imagine America. This is just an imagination moment, okay? We have a balanced budget in the United States. We're starting to knock down the deficit of America. We can cut tax, and we have a gold card, a Trump card that you can come to America. Which entrepreneur have you ever met who wouldn't buy one and wouldn't start building businesses when they think the tax rate here is going to come down and eventually it's going to come down to 20% and eventually it's going to come down to 15%? You won't be able to find a plot of land in America. We're going to take that money. We'll sell them every year.
Yeah.
Right? So they'll knock down our budget deficit. And then eventually, right? If Donald Trump is right and ultimately we can sell 7 million cards, you realize there is no debt in America.
Right.
No debt in America is $1 trillion a year in debt coverage.
Right.
$1 trillion a year in debt coverage, you know what that changes? That changes the Internal Revenue Service. You start to rethink. That's why I'm so excited. That's why our cabinet is so excited.
So that's his kind of imagination. It's like a lot of it just comes down to like changing IRS, eliminating income tax through all these different methods, and just eliminating our deficit, which is important, and then eliminating our debt. Like, it's just like personal finance. The whole reason I want to do this reaction video is because there's so many good parallels to our personal finance. Like, having debt like that is not sustainable. Like, you gotta pick up the Dave Ramsey books and start, going gazelle intensity, like he calls it, towards those, snowballing those debts away. Having a deficit like that is not sustainable. Having these unfair, unreciprocal, not mutually beneficial exchanges between countries, tariff-wise and global trade is not sustainable. Having this manufacturing completely being offshored, we have no capability to produce and manufacture things that are important to our country's security. Like, all of that stuff has to be looked at, investigated, and these are long-term issues that we have to address and fix as a country. So, I think it's and the parallels of it to our personal finance, right? Like, to our personal finance, like understanding where is waste, cutting inefficiencies in our own life, increasing our income through other revenue streams, and reducing and bringing down our expenses so that we don't have a deficit in our own personal finance, so that we don't have debt in our own personal finance, and that, we're creating new revenue streams in our life, just like the ERS, that we are cutting inefficiencies and waste in our own life, like being a DOGE in our own life, having a DOGE in our own personal finances, and then creating better situations so that, like Ramit says in I Will Teach You to Be Rich, we can spend lavishly on what we love and cut what we hate. So that's it, guys. That's why I wanted to talk about this video. That's why I want to react to this video, because there's so many relatable parallels to personal finance and the country's economy, the United States country's economy, to our own personal finances. And there are so many relatable insights that we can gain about how they're addressing countries' problems, and how we can address our own personal finance problems, and how we can improve our own personal finances based on what they're doing in the country that's working, and seeing that macro and bringing that in the micro of our own world. So that's it, guys. I will try to do more reaction to current events and put a personal growth perspective on them. So let me know what resonated with you guys in this video. If you like this reaction style of the video, if you've been a subscriber on this YouTube channel, and let me know if you want to see more of these. I hope that you enjoyed it and you liked the video, and that you subscribe for more videos on this YouTube channel from me. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you guys go and subscribe to the All In podcast and this phenomenal podcast episode that they have with Howard Lutnick. Check out the whole YouTube video for the whole podcast episode. The whole thing is phenomenal. We just reduced it to these 5 clips, but the whole thing is amazing. So definitely go check out their channel, subscribe to their channel, watch this video in its complete, and I have linked it also in the description. I am looking forward to seeing you in my next video on this YouTube channel. Until then, take care, and I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.